Ambassador Crystal of the Velthari Collective pressed his four-fingered hand against the cold surface of the observation window. Below him, the blue and green world called Earth spun slowly in the darkness of space. He had been watching this planet for 3 standard cycles now, and every single day brought new surprises. The small world looked peaceful from this distance, with its swirling white clouds and deep blue oceans. It was hard to believe that something so beautiful could cause so much concern among the elder races of the galaxy. "The monthly report is ready, Ambassador," said his assistant, a young Velthari named Sorn who had only recently joined the observation station. Crystal turned away from the window and walked to the central display table. His long robes swept across the floor as he moved. The holographic display flickered to life, showing data streams and graphs that made his stomach turn. Numbers climbed steadily upward on every chart. Progress markers that should have taken decades to reach were being crossed in mere months. "Read me the summary," he said. Sorn cleared his throat, which was a gesture he had learned from watching humans on their broadcast signals. In the past 30 local days, the humans have made significant advances in 17 different fields of technology. They have improved their computing speed by 12%. They have created 3 new medicines for diseases that have plagued their species for generations. They have launched 4 new satellites into orbit around their world. And they have begun testing a new type of engine that uses principles we believed only the Korthani had discovered after 3,000 years of research. Crystal closed his eyes. When he had first taken this assignment, the Galactic Federation Council had told him it would be simple work. Watch the primitive species, record their slow progress, report back every few cycles. Nothing exciting. It was supposed to be a quiet posting, a way to spend the final years of his career in peaceful observation. That was before he realized what humans actually were. "Update the threat assessment," Crystal said quietly. "Ambassador, we just updated it last month." "I know, update it again." Sorn's scales shifted to a pale blue color, which showed his confusion. "Sir, the Council will think we are being dramatic. We have raised the threat level 4 times this year already. They sent a message last time asking if we were certain our instruments were functioning correctly." "And we will raise it again," Crystal replied. He walked back to the window and stared at Earth once more. "Do you know what the Zethani told me when I first arrived here?" "No, sir." "They said the humans were harmless. They said this species had only achieved space flight a few decades ago. They said we had nothing to worry about, that our main task would be preventing boredom during the long watches." Let out a long breath that fogged the window slightly. "The Zethani are fools." The observation station had been built 200 years ago, when the Galactic Federation first detected radio signals coming from the Sol system. At that time, the humans were still fighting wars with explosive chemicals and had not yet reached their own moon. The Federation had classified them as a Level 2 civilization, which meant they were interesting to watch but posed no threat to anyone. Level 2 species typically remained at that level for thousands of years before making significant progress. That classification had been terribly, dangerously wrong. In the main meeting room of the station, Crystal gathered his team of observers. There were 12 of them, each from a different member species of the Federation. They represented the diversity of the galaxy, with scales and fur and feathers and skin of every color. They had been chosen for their patience and their attention to detail. These were scientists and scholars who had spent their careers studying primitive species, documenting the slow march of progress across countless worlds. None of them looked patient anymore. Their faces showed stress and confusion and something that might have been fear. "Let us begin with the technology division," Crystal said, taking his seat at the head of the long table. "Observer Menth, what have the humans done this month?" Menth was a Gordari, a species that looked like large insects with shiny black shells. She clicked her mandibles nervously before speaking, a habit that showed itself when she was worried. Where do I start, Ambassador? There is so much. The beginning would be helpful. They have created a new material, Menth said. She projected an image onto the central screen. It showed a thin sheet of something that looked like metal but behaved like nothing had ever seen. They call it a graphene composite. It is stronger than any material we have seen them produce before. Stronger than most materials the Federation uses actually. Our engineering teams have examined the data, and they believe this substance could revolutionize spacecraft construction. How did they discover it? Asked Observer Trell, a Korthani who specialized in physics and had spent 3 centuries studying material science. That is the disturbing part, Menth replied, her antennae twitching with agitation. They did not discover it through careful research over many years. A young human in something called a university laboratory mixed some chemicals together and noticed the result was unusual. She was not even looking for this material. She found it by accident while working on something else entirely. The entire discovery took less than 2 local weeks from initial observation to full documentation. The room fell silent. Observers exchanged worried glances across the table. Crystal had seen this pattern many times now. The humans did not innovate the way other species did. Most civilizations in the galaxy developed technology slowly and carefully. They tested everything extensively. They studied the theoretical basis for decades before attempting practical applications. They moved forward in small, predictable steps that could be mapped and forecasted centuries in advance. Humans did none of these things. Humans threw ideas at walls to see what would stick. They built machines before they fully understood how they worked. They made mistakes constantly, and then they learned from those mistakes faster than any species Crystal had ever observed. Where other species saw failure as something to avoid, humans seemed to view it as a necessary step in the process of discovery. Continue, he said wearily. In the field of medicine, said Observer Yellen, a Murthi with soft gray fur that now stood on end with anxiety, the humans have begun trials on a treatment for one of their genetic diseases. They are using a technique they call gene editing. Ambassador, they only developed this technique 20 years ago, and now they are using it to cure conditions that their species has suffered from since its beginning. Our medical experts estimate that within another decade, they may have cured most inherited diseases. And the computing advances? Crystal asked, though part of him did not want to hear the answer. Observer Preth, a mechanical being from the Silicon Collective, spoke up in his precisely modulated voice. They have created a new type of processor that can perform calculations we did not think possible with their current understanding of physics. When we first began observing them, their computers filled entire rooms and could barely solve simple equations. Now they carry devices in their pockets that are more powerful than anything the Federation had at their level of development. Their children use these devices to play games and share pictures of their food. How long did it take them to make this progress? Approximately 70 local years. Felt his heart's beat faster. 70 years. The Velthari had taken 800 years to achieve the same level of computing power. The Korthani had taken 1,000. The fastest species in Federation records had managed it in 300 years, and they had been considered remarkable outliers worthy of extensive study. 70 years, less than a single Velthari lifetime. There is more, Preth continued in the same calm tone that somehow made the information even more disturbing. They are now building what they call artificial intelligence, machines that can think and learn and improve themselves without direct guidance. That is a dangerous technology, Observer Trell said sharply, his scales flushing red with alarm. The 9th law of the Federation specifically prohibits the development of self-improving artificial minds. The incident of Kelvar III proved why such restrictions are necessary. The humans are not members of the Federation, Crystal reminded him. They do not know our laws exist. They do not know we exist. Should we tell them, perhaps if we explain the dangers? Considered this question carefully. The Federation had debated for decades about whether to make contact with humanity. Every year, the debate grew more intense as new observation reports arrived. Some members wanted to welcome the humans into the galactic community. They argued that humans could be valuable allies, that their creativity and speed of innovation could benefit everyone if properly directed. Others wanted to destroy Earth before it was too late. "Not yet," Crystal said finally. "Our orders are to observe only. We will continue to observe." After the meeting ended, Crystal returned to his private quarters. The room was sparse by Velthari standards, containing only a sleeping platform, a desk, and a small shrine to the ancestors. He sat at his desk and began writing his monthly report to the Federation Council. His stylus moved across the electronic pad slowly as he chose his words with care. "Honored Council members," he wrote, "it is my duty to inform you that the threat assessment for species 7293, known locally as humanity, must once again be revised upward. Current classification is Level 4. Recommended new classification is Level 5, with a notation for potential rapid advancement to Level 6 within the next standard decade." He paused and looked at what he had written. Level 5 was the classification given to species that could pose a threat to individual Federation members. Level 6 was reserved for species that could potentially threaten the Federation itself. In the entire history of the Federation, only 3 species had ever reached Level 6, and one of those had destroyed itself before achieving faster-than-light travel. No species in galactic history had ever advanced from Level 4 to Level 6 so quickly. The very idea seemed impossible. Crystal continued writing. "The primary concern is not any single advancement, but rather the rate at which advancements occur. In most species, major technological breakthroughs happen once per generation at most. In humans, they happen monthly, sometimes weekly. Our models for predicting technological development are useless when applied to this species. We have tried adjusting the algorithm 17 times, and each adjustment proves insufficient within months." He stopped again, thinking about what else he needed to say. The council needed to understand not just what the humans were doing, but why it mattered. The humans have a concept they call innovation. It is more than just discovering new things. It is a cultural obsession. They reward those who create. They celebrate those who dream of impossible things and then make them real. Every human child is taught that the future can be better than the present, and they believe this with religious intensity. Failure is not seen as shameful but as a learning opportunity. Risk is embraced rather than avoided. These attitudes are fundamentally different from anything we have observed in other species. Crystal saved his report and transmitted it to the Council's secure servers. He knew what response he would receive. The same response he always received. "Continue observing, report next month." And so he would, because watching humanity was no longer just an assignment. It was a necessity. The Federation needed to know what the humans would do next. Because whatever it was, it would probably be something that changed everything. 3 months later, Crystal stood in the observation deck with the entire crew gathered around him. The main screen showed a live feed from Earth's surface, focused on a facility in a place the humans called Nevada. The landscape was desert, dry and brown and harsh, but the building in the center of the image was massive and modern, surrounded by smaller structures and parking areas filled with vehicles. "What are we looking at?" asked Observer Sorn, who had been promoted to full observer status after showing excellent attention to detail in tracking human communications. "The humans call it a fusion reactor," Crystal replied. "They are attempting to generate power by combining atomic particles, the same process that powers their sun. They have been working on this problem for decades." "Impossible," said Observer Trell flatly. "Fusion power requires containment systems that are far beyond their current technology level. We calculated they would not achieve this for at least 200 more years. I reviewed the calculations myself." Your calculations were wrong, Crystal said. He pointed at the screen. Watch. On the surface below, humans in white coats moved around large machines that hummed with barely contained energy. Numbers flashed on their displays, climbing steadily higher. Voices spoke in excited tones through the broadcast signals the observation station intercepted. Could hear their enthusiasm even through the poor audio quality. And then, for exactly 3.2 seconds, the reactor produced more energy than it consumed. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Observers shouted questions at each other in a dozen different languages. Some ran to their stations to begin analyzing data, their fingers or claws or tentacles flying across control panels. Others simply stood frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. One observer, a young Telluri, had to be helped to a seat after her legs stopped supporting her. Crystal remained calm. He had stopped being surprised by humans months ago. "Update the threat assessment," he said to Sorn. "To what level, sir?" Thought about his answer carefully. Fusion power was a threshold technology. Once a species mastered it, they had access to nearly unlimited energy. With unlimited energy came unlimited possibilities. Ships that could travel faster, weapons that could strike harder, industries that could build anything. "Level 6, he said, "and add a note that we may need to update again soon." The Federation Council's response came faster than usual this time. Within 3 days, a priority message arrived at the observation station, bypassing the normal diplomatic channels and arriving with the highest possible urgency coding. "Ambassador Crystal, the Council has reviewed your latest report and accompanying evidence. Your recommendation to raise humanity's threat level to 6 has been approved after emergency deliberations. Additionally, the Council has decided to increase the size of your observation team by 50% and upgrade your station's sensors to military-grade specifications. A diplomatic delegation is being assembled to discuss the possibility of first contact." Read the message twice to make sure he understood it correctly. First contact. After 200 years of watching from a distance, the Federation was finally going to speak to the humans. He was not sure if this was good news or bad. The diplomatic delegation arrived 3 weeks later, carried by a sleek Federation cruiser that docked with the observation station. The ship was large and elegant, its hull decorated with the symbols of 100-member species. Guards in ceremonial armor escorted the delegates through the docking tunnel. The leader of the delegation was a Zenthari named Ambassador Prime Vorath, a dignified being with silver scales and centuries of experience in interspecies relations. He was old even by Zenthari standards, his scales weathered and his movements careful, but his eyes remained sharp and intelligent. "Ambassador Crystal," Vorath said as he stepped off the transport, extending a clawed hand in greeting. "I have read all of your reports, every single one. You paint a concerning picture of this species." "I report what I observe," Crystal replied, clasping the offered hand briefly. "If the picture is concerning, it is because the reality is concerning." Vorath made a gesture that indicated polite disagreement. "Perhaps you have been too close to the subject. Sometimes observers become overly invested in the species they watch. They begin to see threats where none exist. I have seen it happen before." "With respect, Ambassador Prime, I do not think that is the case here. I invite you to review our data for yourself." "We shall see." Vorath walked to the observation window and looked down at Earth. His silver scales reflected the blue light from the planet below. "They are so small. Their planet is so young. Their history is barely a moment compared to the great civilizations of the Federation. It is hard to believe they could pose any real threat to us." Crystal joined him at the window. "When I first arrived here, the humans had just created something called the Internet. It is a network that connects all of their computing devices together, allowing instant communication across their entire world." "We have similar systems." Yes, but we developed ours over thousands of years, carefully and deliberately. The humans built theirs in decades. And do you know what they used it for? Ambassador Prime. They used it to share knowledge. Every discovery, every idea, every piece of information became available to every human on the planet instantly. Their rate of innovation increased by a factor of 10 almost overnight. Vorath's scales shifted to a troubled gray color. Interesting. That was 25 years ago, Crystal continued. Since then, they have improved the internet constantly, made it faster, made it available to more people, developed new ways to organize and search the information it contains. Now even the poorest humans in the most remote villages can access the sum total of their species' knowledge with a device that fits in their hand. Why does this concern you so much? Crystal turned to face the Ambassador Prime directly. Because knowledge is power, and the humans are giving that power to everyone. Every human child now has access to information that would have required a lifetime of study to gather just a few generations ago. Every human with a dream can find the tools and instruction they need to pursue it. Every problem they face is being worked on by millions of minds simultaneously, sharing results and building on each other's work. You make it sound admirable. It is admirable, Crystal admitted, and terrifying. When the Velthari developed faster-than-light travel, it was the work of a single genius over 40 years of careful research. When the humans reach that point, it will probably be a team of young researchers who build on the publicly available work of thousands of others. They will do it in months, not decades, and then they will share their discovery with their entire species, and within a year every major nation on their planet will have starships. Vorath was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer than before. The Council believes we should make contact soon. Bring them into the Federation before they become a threat. Guide their development in safer directions. That might work, Crystal said, or it might make things worse. Worse how? Right now, the humans compete with each other. Their nations and companies race to develop new technologies. This competition drives their innovation, but it also divides their resources and attention. They waste enormous energy fighting among themselves. If we contact them, if we give them knowledge of the wider galaxy, they might unite. All those competing minds working together toward common goals, with the resources of their entire world behind them. Vorath's scales went pure white, which was the Zenthari expression of deep concern. You think they would see us as a threat? I think they would see us as a challenge, and humans love challenges. Nothing motivates them more than being told something is impossible. The debate about first contact lasted for several more weeks. During that time, the humans continued to advance at their impossible pace. They launched new space missions to their neighboring planets. They built better computers with every passing month. They cured another disease that had killed millions. They found cleaner ways to produce energy and began implementing them with remarkable speed. Crystal documented everything. He had given up on monthly reports and now sent updates every week, sometimes more often. The Council had stopped complaining about his frequency. They were too worried to complain. One morning, Observer Minth burst into Crystal's office without knocking. Her shell was pale with shock, her antennae pressed flat against her head. Ambassador, you need to see this immediately. Crystal followed her to the main observation center, his heart's already beating faster. All 12 observers were gathered around the central display, staring at the images being broadcast from Earth. No one spoke. No one moved. What am I looking at? Crystal asked. They found something, Minth said, her voice barely above a whisper. In their ocean, something that is not from Earth. The images showed a metal object resting on the ocean floor, surrounded by human submarines that looked tiny compared to its bulk. It was clearly artificial, covered in symbols that Crystal did not recognize, its surface pitted and worn by centuries of exposure to salt water. Human submarines circled it, their lights illuminating details that made his blood run cold. "Is that what I think it is?" asked Observer Preth. "It is a probe," Crystal confirmed, recognizing the general design now that his initial shock was fading. "From the Kelthani Empire. They must have lost it centuries ago during one of their exploration missions to this sector. The humans have recovered it. They are already transporting it to one of their research facilities on land. We intercepted communications discussing the operation." Felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear, certainly, anticipation, and something that might have been respect for the humans' quick action. How long until they figure out what it is? Unknown. But Ambassador, the Kelthani probes of that era contained basic technical specifications for their drive systems. It was standard practice at the time to help lost probes navigate home, if the humans can decode the data storage. Crystal did not need her to finish the sentence. He understood perfectly. The humans had just found a shortcut to the stars. "Contact the Council," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. "Tell them the timeline for first contact just accelerated significantly, and update the threat assessment." "To what level, sir?" Thought about the small blue world spinning below him, about the curious and creative and dangerous species that called it home. He thought about what they might do with the knowledge contained in that probe. "Maximum," he said. "Update it to maximum." The Federation Council held an emergency session within hours of receiving Crystal's message. Representatives from every member species gathered in the Great Hall on the capital world of Zenthra Prime, their voices filling the air with 100 different languages that the translation system struggled to process simultaneously. The noise was overwhelming, a cacophony of worry and argument. Ambassador Prime Vorath stood at the central podium, presenting the evidence that Crystal had sent from the observation station. Holographic images showed the alien probe being lifted from Earth's ocean by massive human cranes. Video feeds showed human scientists already beginning to study its surface, cutting samples and running scans and photographing every detail. "The probe is of Kelthani design," Vorath explained, his amplified voice cutting through the noise. "It was launched approximately 400 standard years ago during an exploration mission to the Sol system's outer planets. The Kelthani believed it was destroyed when it failed to report back. Instead, it apparently entered Earth's atmosphere due to a navigation error and landed in their ocean, where it has remained hidden until now." "What technology does the probe contain?" asked Representative Zeth of the Murthi Collective, leaning forward in her seat. "Basic sensor systems, power generation equipment, radiation shielding designs, and most importantly, technical documentation for a basic faster-than-light drive. Standard Kelthani practice at the time was to include such information in exploration probes." The chamber erupted in shouting. Vorath raised his hands for silence, but it took several minutes before order was restored. Representatives argued with each other, some gesturing wildly, others sitting in stunned silence. "The documentation is not complete," Vorath continued once the noise had died down. "It includes principles and diagrams, but not full construction plans. However, our analysts believe that humans with their current technology level could use this information to develop their own FTL drive within 2 to 5 years. "That is unacceptable," declared Representative Crom of the warrior clans, rising to his full intimidating height. "We cannot allow a level 6 species to achieve faster-than-light travel before we have established control over their development. The law is clear. They must be stopped." "How do you propose we stop them?" asked Representative Silk of the Ethery Consciousness, her ethereal form shimmering with agitation. "The humans number in the billions. Their planet has defensive capabilities, including nuclear weapons. Any military action would result in significant losses on our side, and there is no guarantee of success. Better some losses now than a greater threat later." Crystal, who had been connected to the session, via long-range communication from the observation station, spoke up from his position on the view screen. "Honored representatives, if I may offer an observation." The chamber fell silent. Rarely spoke at council sessions, but his expertise on humanity was well known and respected. "Please proceed, Ambassador," Vorath said. "The probe contains information about faster-than-light travel. This is true, but what it does not contain is equally important. It does not contain any information about the Federation. It does not reveal the existence of other species or the location of our worlds. The Kelthani did not include such information in exploration probes. As far as the humans know, they have found a piece of ancient technology from an unknown source." "Your point?" "My point is that we have a choice. We can attempt to destroy the probe and all evidence of its existence, which would require military action against a level 6 species and might fail anyway. Or we can allow the humans to study it and develop their own FTL drive." "That sounds like surrender," Representative Crom growled, his claws scraping against his seat. "It sounds like strategy," Crystal replied. "Consider this. If we attack the humans now, we make an enemy of them before they even know we exist. They will eventually develop FTL technology anyway, whether from this probe or through their own research. Our attack will only delay them, not stop them. And when they finally reach the stars, they will come looking for revenge. We will have created exactly the threat we feared." "What is the alternative?" "We let them develop the technology on their own terms. We watch and we wait. And when they are ready, we make contact peacefully. We offer membership in the Federation. We turn a potential enemy into an ally." The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued passionately on all sides, their voices rising and falling with emotion. Some wanted immediate military action, claiming it was the only way to protect the Federation. Others supported Crystal's plan, believing that cooperation was better than conflict. Still others suggested various compromises that satisfied no one. In the end, the council voted. The result was closer than anyone had expected. By a margin of 3 votes, the Federation chose peace. 2 years later, Crystal received a message that changed everything. The humans had done it. Using the information from the probe combined with their own remarkable research, they had built a working faster-than-light drive. A small ship carrying 4 human astronauts had just completed a successful test flight to a nearby star and back. The journey that should have taken decades was completed in days. Humanity was no longer confined to their home system. "Update the threat assessment," Crystal said automatically, the words coming out before he could stop them. "Sir," Soren replied with a hint of humor in his voice, "there are no levels above maximum." "I know." Crystal stared at the images of the celebrating humans on his screen. They were hugging each other, crying, laughing, holding signs and flags. "Create a new level. Call it special attention required." The Federation Council convened again to discuss the situation. This time, there was less debate. The humans had proven themselves capable of reaching the stars. The question was no longer whether to make contact, but how and when. Ambassador Prime Vorath was selected to lead the first contact delegation. He would travel to Earth with a team of diplomats and specialists from a dozen species, bearing gifts and offers of friendship. The hope was that humanity would choose to join the galactic community peacefully. Before Vorath departed, he visited the observation station one last time. He found Crystal in the observation deck, staring at Earth as he had done countless times before. "Ambassador Crystal," he said, "you have spent more time watching these humans than anyone in the Federation. What advice can you give me?" Thought carefully before answering. He had been preparing for this question for years. "Be honest with them. Humans value honesty highly, and they are remarkably good at detecting deception. Tell them the truth about the Federation, about our fears, about our hopes for peaceful cooperation. Let them make their own choice. And if they choose to reject us, Then we will have more problems than any threat assessment can measure." Crystal paused, then continued. "But I do not think they will reject you. Humans are curious above all else. They want to explore and discover and connect. They will be afraid of us at first, but that fear will not last. Their curiosity will overcome it." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I have watched them for 5 years now. I have seen how they respond to the unknown. They do not hide from it or try to destroy it. They study it. They learn from it. They adapt and grow and change." Crystal smiled, a gesture he had learned from watching humans. "They are the most remarkable species I have ever observed. Frustrating, yes. Terrifying often, but remarkable." Vorath departed for Earth the next day. Watched the diplomatic ship leave the station's docking bay and begin its journey toward the small blue world below. The ship seemed tiny against the vastness of space, a fragile vessel carrying hopes for peaceful coexistence. He knew that history was about to change. The isolation of humanity was ending. A new chapter in galactic history was beginning. And somewhere in the observation station, a computer continued to process data and generate reports. The monthly threat assessment files stretched back years now, documenting humanity's incredible rise from primitive radio signals to faster-than-light travel. Each report showed the same pattern of impossible progress. Crystal pulled up the very first report, written by an observer who had long since retired. Species 7293 shows no signs of developing advanced technology. Current classification, Level 2. Recommendation, minimal observation. No threat anticipated. He laughed softly to himself. If only they had known. Ambassador Prime Vorath's ship entered Earth's atmosphere on a clear morning, descending through clouds and sky until it hovered above a designated landing zone outside a human city called Geneva. Billions of humans watched through their communication networks as the alien vessel touched down. The ship looked strange against the green grass and blue sky, its curves and proportions clearly not designed by human hands. When the doors opened and Vorath emerged, blinking in the unfamiliar sunlight, he found himself facing a crowd of humans who looked just as nervous as he felt. At the front of the crowd stood the leaders of Earth's major nations, along with scientists and diplomats and ordinary citizens who had been chosen to represent their species. Some held recording devices. Others held flowers. A few were crying. "Greetings," Vorath said, his translator device converting his words into the human language called English. "I am Ambassador Prime Vorath of the Galactic Federation. We come in peace and friendship." A human female stepped forward. She was tall with gray hair and kind eyes. According to the briefings, her name was Dr. Sarah Chen, and she had been selected to speak on behalf of humanity after a lengthy and sometimes contentious selection process. "Greetings," she replied, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "We are honored by your visit. We have many questions." "As do we," Vorath admitted. "Perhaps we can find answers together." The first contact proceeded better than anyone had hoped. Over the following days and weeks, Vorath explained the nature of the Federation, its history, its laws, its purpose. He was honest about the concerns that humans had caused among the member species. He admitted that humanity's rapid advancement had frightened many and that there had been those who wanted to destroy Earth. "We know we grow quickly," Dr. Chen said during one of the early meetings, held in a large conference room with representatives from every major nation. "It is in our nature, but we do not wish to be a threat to anyone. We only want to learn and explore and grow." "That is what we hope as well," Vorath replied. "The Federation offers membership to all species who meet certain criteria. You would need to agree to our laws, including restrictions on certain technologies that we have deemed too dangerous. In return, you would have access to our knowledge, our trade networks, our protection." "What technologies would be restricted?" "Self-improving artificial intelligence, beyond certain safety limits. Certain weapons systems that could cause damage across multiple star systems. technologies that have proven dangerous in the past. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. We would need to discuss this among ourselves. Some of our people will not want to accept restrictions on our development. Freedom to innovate is important to us. We understand. Take whatever time you need. The discussions lasted for months. Crystal watched from the observation station as humans debated among themselves about whether to join the Federation. Some argued in favor, pointing to the benefits of peaceful integration with the galactic community. Others worried about losing their independence, about having alien laws imposed on them, about becoming just another small voice in a vast interstellar government. In the end, as Crystal had predicted, curiosity won. Humanity voted to join the Galactic Federation. The ceremony was held on Zenthra Prime, in the Great Hall where Crystal had once argued for peaceful contact. Representatives from every member species gathered to welcome their newest members, their diverse forms creating a rainbow of life. Dr. Chen signed the treaty documents with a hand that trembled slightly but did not waver. "Welcome to the Federation," Ambassador Prime Vorath said. "May this be the beginning of a long and beneficial relationship." After the ceremony, Crystal approached Dr. Chen in the reception hall. "I am Ambassador Crystal," he said. "I have been observing your species for many years." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "You are the one who wrote all those reports about us, the ones they declassified after contact was established. I read them, all of them." "Yes. You were quite worried about us." Made a gesture that indicated acceptance. "Your species is unique. You change and grow faster than any we have ever encountered. I would be foolish not to be concerned." "And now, are you still concerned?" Thought about the question. He thought about everything he had observed over the years. The innovation, the creativity, the determination. The way humans never stopped reaching for things that should have been impossible. The way they learned from failure instead of being defeated by it. "I am still concerned," he admitted. "But I am also hopeful. I believe that if any species can help the Federation grow and improve, it is yours." Dr. Chen smiled. "That is the nicest thing anyone has said to us since we found out we were not alone in the universe. It is simply the truth." 5 years after humanity joined the Federation, Crystal was promoted to a new position. He became the Director of Innovation Studies, leading a team that observed and documented technological progress across all member species. It was a new role, created specifically because of what had been learned from studying humanity. His first act in this new role was to create a special division dedicated to studying human innovation techniques. He believed that other species could learn from humanity's approach to discovery and invention, that the human way of thinking might help shake ancient civilizations out of comfortable stagnation. He was right. Within a decade, the Federation's overall rate of technological advancement had increased by 30%. Species that had been stagnant for centuries began making progress again, inspired by human examples. New ideas spread from world to world as the humans taught others how to think differently, how to embrace failure, how to collaborate across traditional boundaries. The monthly threat assessments continued, though they now measured something different. Instead of tracking humanity's potential danger, they tracked humanity's contributions to the Federation. The format was the same, but the meaning had changed completely. The numbers were impressive. Humans had helped develop new medical treatments that extended lifespans across dozens of species. They had created communication technologies that made interstellar travel safer and easier. They had proposed bold new projects, like building a network of stations at the edges of the galaxy to expand the Federation's reach. They had even suggested ways to make the Federation's governance more efficient and responsive. Not everything was perfect. Humans sometimes chafed at the restrictions placed on them. They complained about laws they considered outdated or unnecessary. They pushed boundaries and asked uncomfortable questions and refused to accept, because we have always done it that way, as an answer. Some older species found this exhausting. But Crystal had learned that this was simply how humans were. They could not be content with the way things were. They always wanted to make things better. It was not rebellion or disrespect. It was their nature. And slowly, gradually, the rest of the Federation began to understand this too. "Ambassador," Soren said one day, using Crystal's honorary title even though he had long since moved beyond that role, "I have the latest innovation report." "Read it to me." In the past month, human researchers have proposed 3 new theories in fundamental physics. They have collaborated with the Corthani on improvements to FTL drives that could cut travel times by 15%. They have worked with the Murtha on genetic treatments that might help endangered species recover. And they have suggested a new approach to the artificial intelligence restrictions that might allow for safer development of advanced systems while still preventing the dangers we fear. Crystal nodded. This was typical now. Humans working with every species, sharing ideas, building bridges that had seemed impossible just years before. "Any concerns?" "Nothing significant. One minor incident where a human researcher ignored safety protocols during an experiment, but the situation was contained quickly." "Humans do love their experiments." "Yes, sir. They say they learn more from failure than success." Crystal smiled. He had heard humans say this many times. It was one of the strangest and most wonderful things about them. "Update the report," he said. "Note that humanity continues to exceed expectations, and add a personal observation." "Yes, sir." "Write this. When I first began observing humanity, I saw them as a threat. I was wrong. They are not a threat. They are a gift. They remind us that the universe is full of possibilities, and that the future is not something that happens to us but something we create together. The Federation has existed for millennia, but humanity has shown us that we still have much to learn." Soren recorded the observation without comment, but Crystal noticed that his scales had shifted to a warm golden color. It was an expression of agreement and approval. "Send the report to the Council," Crystal said, "and then take the rest of the day off. I think we have done enough work for now." As Soren left, Crystal walked to the window of his office. He could not see Earth from here. He was thousands of light years away now, on a station at the edge of explored space where new research was being conducted. But he did not need to see Earth to think about humans. They were everywhere now, scattered across the galaxy, working and learning and building and dreaming. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers on 100 worlds. Human artists created works that moved beings who had never seen Earth. Human diplomats helped resolve conflicts between species that had fought for centuries. And every month, without fail, someone somewhere would look at what they had accomplished and update a report that said the same thing. Humans are remarkable. Watch them closely, and never ever underestimate what they might do next. The story of humanity and the Federation had only begun. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts and misunderstandings and growing pains, but Crystal knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, it would be interesting. It would be very interesting indeed. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the great archives on Zenthra Prime, the original threat assessments were preserved. Future historians would study them, marveling at how worried the Federation had been about a small species on a small world. They would read the monthly updates and shake their heads at the fear that had nearly led to war. And they would remember the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. The future belongs to those who are willing to dream of impossible things and then make them real. The universe rewards the bold, the curious, the restless. And the greatest threat is not a species that grows too fast, but a civilization that stops growing at all. The end of the story was not an ending at all. It was a beginning, the first chapter of a new era in galactic history. And it had all started with an ambassador staring out a window at a small blue world, wondering what the strange creatures below might do next. What they did was change everything.